Hey guys, what's up? Hope everybody's having a good day out there today. Thanks for tuning in for today's video, much appreciated. And actually I'm out here on Table Rock Lake getting ready to start an on the water lesson today. A nice balmy 104 degrees for a high today, but fishing's been pretty good, so that'll be pretty fun. Just wanted to take a chance to do today's video real quick before we get started here. And we're gonna talk about fishing buoys. It's probably, I'm guessing it's one of the most overlooked bass structures that there are, period. And they are great places to catch fish. So I'm going to give you guys some tips and advice on how to approach them. Actually, I got onto this by accident. The very first bass tournament, Bassmaster tournament that I ever went to was at the St. Lawrence River in 1985. My first tournament ever. I didn't know anything about the place. I was just off the turnip wagon in Missouri. Didn't know anything about bass fishing outside of here in Missouri. And anyway, I got up there and I noticed on the St. Lawrence River, there was a bunch of these buoys out in the river. And I just, not knowing any better, I pulled up to one of them, threw a tube down the side of it and caught a big smallmouth. And I started running that pattern and I started getting bit almost every buoy. And the first day of the tournament, I drew Hank Parker. Hank Parker was my first draw ever in a Bassmaster tournament. And I told Hank about what I was doing and he said, yeah, man, let's go try it. So Hank and I went out there, fished my buoy pattern. We both caught good limits of bass, and ever since that I've been doing it. So I'm going to go through here. I'm going to give you guys some tips and advice on what to look for, and I think it's going to help you guys add a new structure to your arsenal. So here we go. Okay guys, here's a good example of what I'm talking about here. You know, just these buoys that you see out in the lake. I mean, they're everywhere. You got idle speed buoys, you got no wake buoys, you got no fishing buoys, whatever like this. But the anatomy of a buoy, if you look here, a lot of it depends on actually the size of the buoy. This is a fairly small one, but some of the buoys are a lot bigger. You got a lot of different type of bass habitat here, because not only do you have the shade of the buoy that goes into the water, and these fish will suspend right underneath the buoy sometimes, especially in clear water, but you also have, every one of these buoys out here has a steel cable that goes down in the water and is anchored by a huge piece of concrete, like a big concrete block. So bass will actually suspend around all of the steel cables on every buoy out there, and they will also use the concrete on the bottom depending upon how deep it is. So what I like to do is I like to get up to these buoys here, make a long cast out like with a swim bait or something, and count it down and try to fish it in several different water zones to try to catch those suspended fish around the cables that are on it, because those cables get algae on it. The algae attracts, you know, shad and bait fish, brings in the bass. And then if the water depth is suitable per the water clarity, that is when I'll fish the rock or the concrete blocks at the bottom of it. So the biggest key when you're fishing the buoys like this is you have to, you know, all the buoys are going to have fish on them, but you have to figure out the technique and the approach to use on each particular buoy, because every lake's different. I mean, if you got a lake like here in Table Rock Lake, on the lower end of the lake, you may have 10 foot of visibility. If you guys are fishing buoys like in Lake Eufaula in Alabama, you may have a foot of visibility. So the water visibility in correlation with the water depth will decide the technique that you want to use. If you're fishing buoys that are like in less than 10 foot of water and the water's dirty, that's when I like to use some type of a shallow to medium running crankbait on there. Sometimes I'll throw a shaky head on the bottom to try to hit those concrete blocks on the bottom. So if the water is shallower than like 10 feet or so, that's when you want to concentrate on the blocks on the bottom and, you know, the fish being suspended right up underneath the high part of the floats. If the water visibility is clear, or if you have a lake that has a lot of smallmouth or spotted bass population in it, that's when they tend to suspend around the cables more. And they don't have to necessarily be right on the cables. You can actually catch them as far as 15, 20 foot away from the cables. They will relate to those cables, maybe not get right up next to them. So they're real easy to fish. You can just get out here, fan cast. You know, I like a little 1/8 ounce swim bait, like that little Mega Bass Spark Shad on it, something like that's real good. Sometimes I'll throw a drop shot out there. All that stuff's gonna work good. And another thing that's really good on these buoys is early and late in the day, a walk in top water, like some type of a spook or something like that, can bring those fish up out of the little bit clear water. So anyway, guys, they're pretty easy to fish, pretty simple to fish. Don't pass them up. I think a lot of people never even give them a second chance. Another thing on that is a lot of these buoys, they will mark like man-made fish habitat. So don't pass those up. I've caught some really big bass off those man-made, you know, piles that are labeled by the buoys out there. So just a quick tip, guys. Gonna get out here and get the drop shots going. Hope you guys are doing good. We'll talk later.